Please join me in welcoming Sir Roger Deakins.
The more you look, the less you know.
Well, that clip reel, barely scratches the surface of what you've done, but it does make me think about how many great films you've done with so many great directors. And I'm curious what motivates your choices in terms of deciding what movies you're going to take on. Is it why you work with certain directors? Is it the subject matter, the actors, all the above?
Subject. I mean, it's the script really. It's if I'm going to the cinema to see it.
Well, tonight we're going to watch Fargo, which I believe was your third movie with the Coen Brothers. You had done Barton Fink and Hudsucker Proxy before that. Yeah. And Fargo is an interesting movie because it's a little bit more restrained than those previous two. What kinds of conversations did you have with the Coen Brothers going into it about what the guiding principles are going to be for the visual style?
Well, it was interesting because we'd just done Hudsucker, which was quite a big budget. It was their biggest budget, and it failed. And Joel and Ethan said, you probably want to do this, but we've got this little film we want to do. And I said, we don't be silly, so I came on, of course, not knowing it was in Minnesota. But anyway, no, but I mean, I'd do anything with those guys. The first conversations we had was they wanted it to feel like it was almost like a docudrama, and Ken Loach was mentioned, the idea of cinematography being observational. So the idea we wouldn't move the camera, we would just sort of sit in a corner and cover a scene from one corner and then go the other side, and something like that. But the first shot we did was the shot when Steve Buscemi gets out the car and takes the suitcase of money and goes to the fence and buries it by the fence. That was the first thing we shot, and I think it was a 120-foot track, so the whole idea of not moving the camera went out the window. But compared with like Barton Fink or Hudsucker, it's a much more observational sort of movie, and it's shot on maybe 35 or 40 mil most of the time. Obviously it's wide angle shots as well, but it's much longer length. It's not a long length film, but it's longer than Barton Fink, which was mostly all shot on a 25 or 32. So it did have a certain different quality.
Well, and I'm assuming that Hudsucker Proxy, probably based on the elaborate sets, was mostly, or certainly a lot of it was probably shot on stage, and Fargo looks like a lot of it was shot on location. For you as a cinematographer, do you have a preference, or what are the pros and cons of shooting on location in Minnesota as opposed to the control of the stage?
I don't really have a preference either way. It really depends on the script and also the budget and practicality of doing things. Yeah, there was no sets on Fargo. The only time we faked something was we shot some of the night scenes where they shoot the cop that stopped the car, and the few inserts there we shot in a warehouse because we basically run out of snow and we couldn't. It was really hard shooting those exteriors at night. In fact, we shot 3 nights, and each night we moved because the snow melted in our first location, so we literally drove nearer the Canadian border from where we were based to get some snow. And it was kind of crazy. But yeah, and then, obviously Hudsucker, big sets, kind of complicated sets, yeah. But I mean, it's just what the project required,
Well, you mentioned again shooting in Minnesota and shooting in the snow and having to chase the snow. I mean, what were some of the big logistical challenges and practical challenges on Fargo?
Really that. I mean, it was because we didn't get any snow. I mean, the opening sequence, back in those days, the union thing, I had to have somebody standing by as an operator because I always operate the camera. And Robin Brown, who'd been my focus puller assistant, was on that film as my standby operator. And he went out and shot the opening sequence in that heavy snow. And he shot it the day we were there's a scene in a tower block at the office of the father-in-law. and there was a blizzard outside, and we were shooting in this tower office block, and we didn't like it because we hardly got any exterior. Because it was almost white out. So some of the close-ups you see enough, it was fine. But Robin went out and shot that opening sequence, the opening shots of the cars and the ambulance, while we were shooting in this office building. So we didn't get much snow. There's a scene where Buscemi's changing the number plate on the car. There was no snow. Airport car park. They had to snow it overnight. Effects team, because we didn't have any snow. That was the strangest thing. But it was cold. I mean, it was brutally cold, but there was no snow.
So, you end up doing many, many more films with Coen Brothers. You've done several films with a lot of directors you have these ongoing relationships with, like Denis Villeneuve and Sam Mendes. What, for you, comprises a successful cinematographer-director relationship? What do you look for in a director that facilitates your best work?
I don't know. It's just the way you see the world, I suppose. You've got something in common, and I just... the kind of collaboration. I mean, I'm not somebody that wants to go in and just push a button and bounce off the ceiling. And so I like that challenge and the collaboration with somebody that wants to sort of push the way things are done. They're trying to achieve as the best they can possibly get, and they have a passion for it. I think passion is really important. There are some directors that I don't think are that passionate about what they do. Maybe they love being directors, but they don't have a passion for making movies.
I want to open up the audience. We've got time for a few questions before we start the movie. Let's see. I'll go up there in the back. I see a hand. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever like to rewatch your own work or your own movies, or do you find it's just dreadful to see what you've done?
I have a very good point. I mean, I think because when you're finishing the film, whether it be filming in a lab and doing now DI digitally, you watch a film so many times after the thing's been cut, and there are so many things you look at and wish you'd have done differently, or things that you didn't manage because of budget or weather or whatever. And so I don't like really to watch films very much after having to do the final timing on it. But then, 5 years might pass and I might see something, and then I go I forget all those things that I missed, and I think, well, that's not so bad. I remember there was a anniversary screening on the Lincoln Center in New York of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And we hadn't seen it for many, many years, and I just thought it was wonderful. It was really nice to see it after so long and think, oh yeah, that was all right.
Yes.
So I love asking people about their favorite films, and it's my understanding that The Samurai and Army of Shadows are among their favorites. Can I ask what about Jean-Pierre Melville's work speaks to you, and why those are some of your favorites, if they still are?
I'll repeat that for people here in the back. The question was about Jean-Pierre Melville's films, which Roger has expressed fondness for, and what it is about them that speak to him.
Have you seen them?
Yes.
They're simple, very direct. The subjects are interesting. They pose questions. It's just brilliant filmmaking. Hey, what's not to like about them?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, out of your whole long, expansive career, what would you consider to be the best work that you've done, just as a cinematographer?
The question is what Roger would consider to be the best work he's done as a cinematographer.
What is best?
I guess so that what you prefer, the film that you saw, you're like, I'm 100% completely satisfied with the job.
That was a rhetorical question. What is best? I have no idea what best is. I mean, the best work that I ever worked on, you could say, well, Montage was 1984 because it's one of the most classic stories. We think we all know. But what is best? Or is it a landscape out of Jesse James, or the train coming towards Brad, standing in jet. I don't know what's best. I have no idea. And today I would say one thing, tomorrow I would say something else probably. I really don't know how to put that. I mean, Kundun is one of my favourite films, but then just things are flashing in my head now. There's shots come in my head, and I think, my God, how did we get that shot? We were so lucky, but is that best? I have no idea.
Let's see, go to this side.
Which production did you have the most fun doing?
Which production did you have the most fun doing?
At the time or retrospectively? I say that because often at the time I don't feel I'm having fun. But retrospectively, I look back and think, oh, that was fun. And my wife James will say, you remember? For different reasons. I just mentioned Kundun. The experience of working with those people, with the Tibetans, was just kind of extraordinary. Fun, I don't know, but I have such fond memories of that. But I also have really fond memories of 1984, because it was one of the first large films I did, and it had such wonderful actors, John Hurt and Richard Burton, the two of them, and it was just amazing to sit with those guys at lunchtime and just talk, and I mean, that was fun, but I mean, at the time I was stressed out.
Yeah, 1984 is a really great movie. We screened that at the Egyptian, and it was fantastic to see it on the big screen. I really recommend that for people who haven't seen it. Yes, up there. Yeah, you're looking at, yeah.
Over the span of your career, what was the biggest challenge that you faced on set?
Again, what kind of challenge? There's certain actors that didn't like anybody looking at them while they were being filmed. There's certain actor that did a lot of stage shows in New York, and somebody said to me, well, what do you do on audience on a stage show? Do you have everybody turn and look the other way? I mean, what's the hardest thing I ever did? I shot a documentary on a yacht sailing around the world in a yacht, Whitbread round the world race. That was the hardest thing I've ever did.
Well, bringing up actors though raises a question. Like both movies we're watching tonight have fantastic performances. And I was thinking, Macy and Fargo. I think you and he had worked together before on a Mammoth movie, and I'm curious how you see your role as a cinematographer in terms of creating an environment that's going to help facilitate the actor's best work. Is that something you think about, or is it more like, no, that's the director's problem?
No, I think that's a really underrated part of the cinematographer's role, because if you don't create that space for the actors to work, I mean, then you've got nothing, because it's their faces on the screen, especially say something like The Man Who Wasn't There or Fargo, either one, is without those performances, you basically don't have a film. So it's a really important part of the cinematographer's job. Yeah, absolutely. It's partly why I love operating, because I have that relationship with the cast, and I can control, just how many people are on set, basically, the kind of level of movement there is while somebody's trying to perform, and then you judge. Every actor is so different. It's really interesting, and they might demand something different of you. And there's been some actors that don't really want to connect with the crew, or with me, or my assistant, or whatever. But they'll really kind of appreciate. They'll look at you sometimes after a take, and they really want something back. That's really interesting. And if you just sort of maybe nod, they'll sort of go something that was a great take. You know what I mean? And I say it's kind of up to you as a cinematographer, I think, to sort of judge what that actor needs, especially these days when often a director is a long way away, sitting in a tent watching a screen, so that you have a personal relationship with an actor on the set. It's kind of interesting dynamic, really.
think we have time to maybe squeeze in like one or two more. All the way up in the back in the center.
Is there anyone at the top
Yeah.
of your,
That's okay, go ahead and we'll go to the, yeah.
Is there anyone at the top of your work list that you haven't worked with yet, and why them?
Yeah, there's a number of directors I haven't worked with and actors I haven't worked with, yeah, but I'm not going to mention names. But,
Alright, so last question up there in the center in the very back. No.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, as a cinematographer, like how you can, like, which you weigh more, I mean, between the style of the visual telling or the logistics of the stories?
I'm not really sure on that one. I'm not sure what you're asking, sorry.
I mean, it's like, because sometimes, like, cinematographers, they all want to create some beautiful images, but sometimes it's, you know, like, it's nothing to do with the story itself.
Yeah, well, I think one's got to be really aware of that. I think I hate it sometimes you leave a showing of a film and you're walking out and somebody says, "Oh, I love that beautiful sunset," or "that beautiful shot," or "I love that shot," and then you think, well, actually, I think then I've failed, because if something stood out, then you've actually failed, because you're trying to create something that is a whole that is kind of seamless, that people don't really notice. I mean, I think if your work's good, it's not noticed, which is, yeah, odd.
Alright, well, we've got two great movies to get to, so I'm going to wrap this up. But thank you so much for coming to talk. It's all great, Fargo.